Hello and welcome to Wilderspool, the home of Warrington Rugby League Football Club. Join me on a trip down memory lane and we'll take a look at the history of this great club and at some of the people who have served it.
As most folk know, the origins of rugby can be traced to rugby school in England. It was in 1823, during a soccer match, that a student, William Webb Ellis, decided to pick up the ball and run with it. When the opposition got over their astonishment, they tackled him, and so the sport of rugby was born. The students so enjoyed the idea of handling them, they began to play this new game as an alternative to soccer. Rules were sketchy and tended to be spontaneously invented. In 1871, the Rugby Football Union was formed to standardise the rules and govern the game. Although rugby was played in Warrington from 1876, the Warrington club wasn't formed until 1879, when members of the Padgate and Zingari teams joined forces. After moving grounds 4 times in as many years, Warrington finally reached Wilderspool, the site of their present ground. The Wire, so nicknamed because of the local wire pulling industry, won their first silverware in 1886. This was the South West Lancashire and Border Towns Trophy, won by defeating Aspel at Fairfield. Wire were one of the original 21 clubs, who, after unsuccessfully attempting to pay broken time payments to players who lost money due to playing rugby with the blessing of the English Rugby Union, decided to form the breakaway Northern Rugby Football Union. On the 29th of August 1895, in a meeting at the George Hotel, Huddersfield, this was done. Wire were Challenge Cup runners-up in 1901 and 1904, losing to Batley and Halifax respectively. During this period, one of the first true superstars emerged. This, of course, the legendary Jackie Fish. A winger with electrifying pace, he scored 215 tries and 262 goals for Wire in a career spanning 13 seasons. He was a member of the victorious team that took the Challenge Cup in 1905 and again in 1907, beating Oldham at Wheatersfield Broughton. Here's a snap of another player of that period, Ernie Brooks, together with the trophy. This success in 1907 so captured the imagination of the Warrington fans that a tram was illuminated and decorated with the trophy and paraded in a triumphant tour of the town. Jack went on to a short spell as trainer and steered the side to the cup final in 1928. Sadly, he died in 1940, but his exploits and charisma will live long in Wire history. This highly successful Wire side contained the first Warrington player to tour with the British Lions, the Welsh forward Frank Sugars, who made 12 appearances on this successful tour. The Challenge Cup runners-up position in 1913 and 4th position in the league really were the high points of this period. After the end of the war in 1921, Wire claimed the Lancashire Cup for the first time, defeating local rivals Leigh. How they enjoyed that. Wire went on to enjoy their finest league campaign 4 years later. In the 1925-26 season, they finished behind Wigan, whose wing sensation Johnny Ring scored 3 tries to clinch first place for Wigan. This photograph shows Wire during a half-time pep talk in the match against Wigan. Jimmy Tranter was the outstanding player of the period, a giant in every respect. Jim signed for Wire in 1911 and went on to play 439 games in a career that lasted 15 years. He played centre in the 1913 Challenge Cup final, but by 1926 had moved into the pack for the championship final. Now here's a rare photograph. Jim in his benefit match in 1926, and that's his son as well. Proud of Dad, no doubt. Well, that same season, hopes were high for the Challenge Cup, and Wire were drawn away to Hunslet in the first round. This rarely seen archive footage shows the travel arrangements and the tremendous support for the team at the time. This is Arpley Station, with well-known club officials Fair Barber, Bob Anderton and Sam Jones. Also appearing Frank Williams and Jackie Fish. No luxury team coaches in those days, public transport was the order of the day. And these are the Wire stars of the day. Arthur Child, a cheerful chappie before the game, but it turned out to be his last. He was carried off with a broken thigh. tragic way for his career to end. Here's Jimmy Tranter again. I wonder how many of today's superstars indulge in the dreaded weed as part of their big match preparation. Didn't seem to affect Jimmy. Tom Cunliffe had the reputation of being a bit of a dab hand with the card tricks, a latter-day Paul Daniels if you like. His sleight of hand was also his trademark on the field, but we do suspect the cameraman here might have been his stage assistant in this little route. Bob Anderton was to become Mr. Warrington over the coming years. His mood summed up the relaxed approach of the team on its travels. One of Bob's travelling companions, Sam Jones, didn't look to have a care in the world either as the wire crossed the Pennines to do battle with Hunslet. Billy Cunliffe had his heart and mind set on making Warrington team of the decade. Arthur Catterall's fashion sense tells us that bow ties were very much in vogue. You don't see too many around Wilderspool these days, or anywhere else come to think of it, unless you're face to face with Robin Day. And Freddie Ryder was another integral part of a team with phenomenal support, even though a general strike was imminent when supporters had to walk to matches. Everything was different in those days. What did the team do when they arrived in Leeds? They took another ride out into the country for a bit of fresh air. Those that joking, that is. The purpose really was to discuss tactics before the team reached the dressing room. Jackie Fish was the coach of the day, and he had words of wisdom to impart to a team that was in its most successful phase since its formation. They certainly had their characters too. Now watch out for the little chap on the left, surely the Andy Gregory of his day. Team spirit obviously good. That season, 1925-26, Wyre finished second in the league, their highest ever placing. Out of 36 games played, 27 were won, 1 drawn and only 8 lost. Time for a leisurely stroll before kick-off. Note the player there with a box brownie about to get his pictures for posterity. And these pictures certainly give us a unique reminder of the sort of people who played in those days. The prop forwards were clearly anticipating a tough encounter. Helmets at the ready. And so to the match, and what a crowd. No helmets, but if you didn't have a hat, you were nobody in those days. Bowlers, trilbies, flat caps, even the kiddies had their short back and sides covered up. And here come the two teams. This is Hunslet, one of the strongest sides of the era. Formidable opposition to say the least. And here come the Wyre next. And for those who love to hear the famous names, this was the team. Jolly, the captain and goal kicker, who went on to kick 54 goals. Frowen, the unfortunate Arthur Child. Catterall, winger Roberts, who ended the season as top try scorer with 21. Flynn, Ryder, the prop forward Billy Cunliffe, 11 times a British Lion. Peacock, Harrop, Tom Cunliffe, Williams and Tranter. Hunslet had won the toss. The game is underway. Warrington have the first chance of points. Ben Jolly kicks the goal. The scrums were perhaps more important in those days. Here Ryder tries to get his backs moving. Another goal attempt had gone wide, but so far the trip has been well worthwhile. Certainly the Wyre fans enjoying themselves. Come on, boys. Much of the action was centred in the middle of the field. Notice how the scrum is more union-like, but the ball is spun quickly across the line, and the only try of the game is scored by Roberts for the Wyre. There was to be another penalty goal for Jolly, and Warrington went on to win the match by 11 points to 7, despite the loss of Arthur Child. They were successful in the next round too, defeating St Helens Rex by 17 points to 12. But in 3, the loss of Jolly affected them, and they went out to a powerful Hull side by 15 points to 2. Usually it's the players who make the headlines, but there's one man who was surely a superstar for Warrington, R.F. Anderton. He was appointed club secretary in 1919 and went on to be associated with the club in every position. a larger-than-life character, a JP, a publican. He was a born organiser, and this was recognised by the Rugby League, who appointed him as tour manager with the Lions in 1932 and again in 1936. These are some clips showing the Sydney scene at the time, 1936, almost like England, isn't it? I am joking. Not even Bondi Beach could induce Bob to cast his raincoat. These exclusively show Bob on the 36 tour relaxing with some of the players. Next to him here is a wire star of the time, prop forward Jack Cobb Miller, a fishmonger back in the old town. His popularity was extended to the Sydney media, who did a comic strip of Bob as the tour manager. Bob's true passion, though, was the wire, who he served for 50 years in every capacity. He was also instrumental in the inauguration of the Lance Todd Trophy for Wembley's Man of the Match. If any one man was to stand out alone in the history of the wire, it would surely have to be R.F. Anderton. The signing of Cumbrian goal kicker Billy Holding in 1927 was a turning point for wire. Billy later set a club record of 101 goals in the 1931 season. The highlight of this period was winning the Lancashire Cup in 1929. In 1931, Wire signed star Australian centre Bill Shankland, who went on to become the first Australian to captain a Wembley Cup side. And before that final against Huddersfield, here are the lads in the dressing room discussing tactics for the game. No computerised information in those days, but the strategy was worked out over a Subbuteo-type table. The team introduced to the Prince of Wales before the game. The actual final was regarded by many as the finest ever Wembley showpiece. Wire lost, but the fans turned out in their thousands to welcome their heroes home. Over the next 3 seasons, Warrington finished as Championship runners-up, Challenge Cup runners-up and again Championship runners-up respectively. Another good season in 1937-38 saw Wire win the Lancashire League and also the Lancashire Cup for the 4th time. The 1939 season saw war declared and Wilderspool was commandeered as the depot. Wire can really count themselves fortunate to have a ground to return to after the war, as the Fletcher Russell gas stove factory, situated right next to the field, was earmarked for bombing by the German Air Force. This photograph shows the coordinates for the bombers. The immediate post-war years provided a boom time for rugby league, and Wilderspool housed some enormous crowds, with the ground record of nearly 35,000 being set. It was at this time in 1945 a rather frail and balding Australian sailor asked for a trial. Leeds had been given the opportunity but declined the offer. He was, of course, Bevan, the try-scoring genius who was to go on to amass a world record of tries in an astonishing career. Bony and usually heavily bandaged, Bevan made a mockery of the meanest of defences in a career that stretched until 1964. Here's a shot of him having a rub-down with Jackie Hamblett, another great clubman. No one has come anywhere near to challenging Bevan's world record of 796 tries in 688 first-class games. His debut was in November 1945 against Oldham, his last game for Blackpool Borough in 1964, ironically against Oldham. His inclusion in Rugby League's Hall of Fame confirms him as one of the game's truly greats. The 1947-48 season started badly for Wire, prompting them to sign some new players. Spiv Riley, Bill Derbyshire, Harold Palin, and eventually they did finish in second place in the league table. Bevan scoring his 57th try of the season to help them to their first ever championship final. Other new players were signed, such as Albert Pimblett from Halifax, Powell, Waring and Bryn Nolden. This, they thought, would keep the backs on their toes. In March, Australian Harry Bath was signed from Barrow, but too late to play in the top 4 playoff. He was to develop into a real tower of strength for the Wire, becoming a world-class forward and a prolific goal kicker. In the playoff semi-final, Wire beat Huddersfield 17 points to 5. And this is the final. The scene, Main Road, Manchester. Wire's opponents, the highly rated Bradford Northern. Warrington were to win by 15 points to 5. The directors could be satisfied. Their signings had been justified. Another trophy for the Wilderspool cabinet. Once again, the Wire fans turned out in their thousands to welcome home their heroes. The following season's home game against Wigan, mighty Wigan, was played in front of a record crowd. One man who remembers it well was Wigan's hooker of the day, Joe Egan, who later had a short spell as the Wire coach. These are his memories.
Wigan and Warrington were usually the highlights of the season. You could easily say that Wigan was the premier team at that time and Warrington was the second team, so every time they met it was a great occasion. And on this particular one, it's reckoned to be the biggest crowd that ever was on Wilderspool ground, and there were 34,304 spectators. The match was played in 1949 and Wigan eventually won the match 8 points to 4. There wasn't a lot of spectacular stuff as we've seen in other films of that time, but we may be able to pick one or two items out. It seemed to be more than heavy. The ground was heavy and it seemed to be difficult to play on this occasion. And there was a lot of pressure from Warrington to score a try. The thing in those days was that you could play for a long time attacking and defending, and it built up a great atmosphere of suspense. A lot of people didn't like the old-fashioned style until before the Six Tackles, and there's the ball being swung out right to the, hoping to get to the Warrington great Brian Bevan. And there's a try for Wigan. Looked like Ernie Ashcroft scoring to me. There's Jerry Allen, number 7, Bill Riley, 10, Ike Fishwick, 9. Looking a bit disconsolate under the stick. I know it was Johnny Alty was with the ball. There's Johnny Alty running again with the ball. And I mentioned Johnny because he was actually acting deputy for Tommy Bradshaw at that time. He was the regular scrum half, but Johnny Alty had a good spell. While I know myself giving the Sunday a turn, my old mate Kenji a pat, and then one through the legs. Trying to keep the game going. And there's Kenji doing his stuff. At the end of the game, Jack Conley, Tess Mountford coming off, Johnny Alter, Bill Hudson. Those Wigan spectators always elated at winning, of course.
On to 1949 and the same old foes in the days when it cost 1 3d for a seat, 9d for OAPs and 3d for children. Central Park, Wigan. It was a successful season for Warrington, even though they didn't actually win a cup. Their team on this day, April the 9th, 1949, Les Jones, Brian Bevan, Albert Pimblett, Brian Nolden, Albert Johnson, Jack Fleming and Jerry Helm, Bill Derbyshire, Ike Fishwick, Jim Featherstone, Harry Bath, Bob Ryan and the captain, Harold Palin. The Wire scorers on the day, Fleming with a try and Palin with 2 goals. The same season, by the way, saw Wire finish top of the league and rivals Wigan second. Wire beat Barrow in the playoff, but Wigan lost to 3rd place Huddersfield. Wire won 39 of their 46 games played, a lowest home gate, would you believe it, of 13,500, a highest of 34,300. Wigan were too good for them on this day, but just settle back now and enjoy the action. Wigan the winners. Soon afterwards, Wyre contested the championship final against the in-form Huddersfield. In front of a 75,000 crowd at Main Road, Huddersfield took a commanding lead of 13 points to 0. It was still that way with 15 minutes to go, but then Wyre put in an almighty effort. Francis and Jackson scored tries, Bath kicked 2 goals, Palin kicked a goal, but they were 1 point short of winning the game. Wyre 12, Huddersfield 13. Another defeat in a big match, but those die-hard supporters turned out in numbers yet again when it came to the civic reception. In 1950, with powerhouse Australian skipper Harry Bath leading the way alongside that brilliant scrum half Jerry Helm, Warrington won their first ever Challenge Cup final. That's Bath going over for the first try, and that after a pain-killing injection. A really historic occasion for Warrington this. They were the better team on the day and scored tries through Bath, Ryder and Nolden. Palin kicked 4 goals and a drop goal, and the final score, Warrington, Widnes 0, Jerry Helm won the Lance Todd Trophy. The honour of lifting the Challenge Cup fell to captain Harry Bath, and the team went on its traditional lap of honour, showing the Challenge Cup to the fans. And here for the record is the team: Jones, Bevan, Ryder, Albert Norton and Johnson, Nolden and Jerry Helm, Derbyshire, Fishwick, Fisher, Bath, Lowe and Palin. The 1950-51 season started well for Wyre. They had 13 wins in a row, including this pre-season Ward Cup game against local rivals Wigan, laughingly called a friendly. The final score, Wyre 12, Wigan 7. Later in the same season, Wigan were to get their revenge in the Lancashire Cup final. The venue on this occasion, Station Road, Swinton. The pre-match introduction's a prelude to a fantastic Wigan performance. The Riversiders were to run in some memorable tries in a sparkling performance. They went by 28 points to 5. The familiar figure of Ken G, scrum cap and all, was in good goal-kicking form too. Wyre's only scorers on the day, Norton with a try and Palin with a goal. But this was to be a mere hiccup in Warrington's season. They followed the disappointment of losing to Wigan by winning their next 3 games, and then after a solitary defeat at Derwent Park against Workington, went on another 13-match unbeaten sequence. No doubting, though, this was Wigan's day. Even when Warrington's most famous winger of all time, Brian Bevan, found himself with a chance, he couldn't take it. You won't believe this. He kicks ahead, gathers, and then, surprise, surprise, drops the ball over the line. No try. New Zealand assessed Mountford succeeded Chris Brockbank as team manager in 1952, but despite Bevan's 62 tries and Bath's 162 goals, there were no honours. But within a year, the Wire fans were bound for Wembley again. The players were going quackers. I suppose anyone called Bath has a right to play with rubber ducks, and the scrum half at the helm isn't such a grouchy fellow after all. It could be a hair set to with Halifax. Watch out for the boobs, lads. A memorable occasion this for stalwarts Anderton, Helm and Ray Price, but down to more serious matters. The wing wizard Bevan is going through his paces, and having dispensed with his beak, the Aussie Bath is concentrating on the power of his boot. And so to Wembley, a real battle of the roses. Warrington from Lancashire against Halifax from Yorkshire. The teams were presented to Lord Derby. Halifax first. Warrington were captained on this occasion by fullback Frodsham. They were full of household names: Bevan, Jim Challoner, Price, Helm, Bath and Ryan. In truth, this was a disappointing final for the crowd of 81,841. Halifax, though, took the lead, a penalty by Griffiths. It was a game of many missed chances. Bath's practice the previous day hadn't paid off. Only 4 out of 13 goal attempts on the day were successful. At long last, Harry Bath did find the mark. The match failed to produce a single try and ended Warrington 4, Halifax 4. The replay took place at Odsal Stadium, Bradford. A world record crowd of over 102,000 fans were there. It's estimated that several thousand more were actually inside Odsal, and it's a minor miracle a major disaster didn't occur. The terraces were made up of railway sleepers set in ashes. Fans who couldn't see lifted out the sleepers and piled them up to obtain a better view. And the match was certainly a better one than had been witnessed at Wembley. Jim Challoner achieved what no one had managed then, scoring the first try way out, just too far out for Bath to convert. The Aussie was having no luck with his goal kicks, this missed by a whisker. The half-time of the vociferous Albert Fernley chanced to wind up his Halifax teammates. Wire took a breather. It really was a rousing final. Halifax applied the pressure, trying to get back into the match. They had some good moves, but that was a forward pass. Warrington not only held on despite Halifax coming back with that penalty, Bevan showed all his tricks going down the wing, and then Bath did land a penalty goal. Another Griffiths goal cut the deficit to 5-4, but this was to be Warrington's day. Although Bath again failed to get the range, Warrington came again. Another tilt down the right, led by who else but Bevan. And finally, it's Jerry Helm going over to clinch victory. A Warrington success by 8 points to 4. The Challenge Cup was theirs again. Three days later, Wyre's season was complete, and it's Wyre versus Halifax again. This time the league final, and it's Main Road, Manchester. Again a highly competitive match. It could hardly have been closer, but Warrington came out victorious by 8 points to 7. Wyre had played a Wembley final, a Championship semi-final, a Wembley replay and a Championship final, all within 14 days. And the players had picked up the princely sum of £140 each for their efforts. Victory for Warrington, and more silverware to polish. Not that that worried the victorious skipper, who knocked on for the first time and nearly knocked himself out. The streets of Warrington were lined to see the Wilderspool heroes arrive by Sharabang. These players and fans were getting used by now to civic receptions. The town hall steps, a familiar setting for yet another Warrington success story. Wyre were champions again the following year, winning the title for the third time in 5 final appearances in the second year in succession. On this occasion, Wyre's opponents were Oldham at Main Road, Manchester. The match was a hard one, played in what resembled a mud bath by the time it finished. Bout the only try of the game, Harry Bath kicked 2 goals and Warrington beat Oldham. 7 points to 3 the final score, the last time that Wyre won a championship final. Oldham had been beaten for the third time that season, and again Warrington's players stepped up for their prize. If only they could hold on to cups. The Warrington Guardian had another triumph to acclaim. Mudded heroes, but who cares when you've just won the trophy? It wasn't easy to maintain such high standards, but in '99 there was great joy when St Helens were vanquished in the Lancashire Cup final at Central Park. Brian Bevan there scoring a controversial try. Did he really touch down? Well, as the saying goes in the game, read it in the papers. It was a tough, uncompromising affair, which Wyre eventually took by 5 points to 4 on a rather drab day. A game of few chances. Bevan had taken the only one so far. So, yet again, the matchstick man had been the match winner, and he was carried from the field. Remarkably, Warrington had never played their way to the final. It mattered not, the trophy was theirs. Bevan, a living legend if ever there was one, was lifted shoulder high on his way back to the dressing room. The football pink gave the old man the glory. In 1960-61, the League Championship playoff brought Wyre head-to-head with Swinton. By now, Warrington had added names like Eric Fraser, Jackie Edwards, Harry Major and Laurie Gilfedder. They proved too strong for the Lions, winning by 13 points to 5. Inevitably, Bevan scored 2 tries, O'Grady 1, Fraser and Gilfedder kicked a goal apiece. O'Grady's try was a beauty, clinching a place in the final against Leeds. It's all over, and yet again the Wire fans have a big date to look forward to. And so it was back to Odsal, 7 years after that famous day when the Challenge Cup had been won there. The opponents' Leeds on this occasion, though, were in no mood to be beaten, even though Jim Challoner was in excellent form in the centre for Wire. An interception try by Challoner, but Leeds had a man to match him on this day. The man with the golden boot from Wales, Lewis Jones. He had a superb match. Laurie Gilfedder was the man entrusted with the kick. But he didn't fail. This was exactly the same Warrington side that had disposed of Swinton in the semi-final, and it was Brian's 6th appearance in a championship final. There wasn't a lot for Wire fans to cheer on the day, but Challoner did go over for his 2nd try. It was Leeds' very first success in the competition. So those 2 tries from Challoner and 2 goals from Gilfedder, the only moments of joy for Warrington and their manager Cess Mountford. It was to be his last match in charge. Ernie Ashcroft, as synonymous with Wigan as he was with Warrington, succeeded Mountford in 1961. The following season, Bevan was transferred to Blackpool Borough, and his last match for Wire was on Easter Monday, 1962, against Lee. He'd been a first-team regular at Warrington for 16 memorable seasons. Lee were defeated by 29 points to 17, and they gathered in front of the main stand, chanting Brian Bevan's name. Ashcroft was unfortunate to arrive at a time when the club's fortunes slumped, with only a Lancashire Cup win against Rochdale Hornets in 1965 by 16 points to 5 to remember. October 1967, and Wire met St Helens at Central Park in the Lancashire Cup final. Again, by now, the names of the heroes had changed. Warrington's best-known players by this time were Jackie Melling, Brian Glover, the half-back pairing of Willie Aspinall and Parry Gordon, and those toughest teak forwards Keith Ashcroft, Brian Brady and Barry Briggs. Willie Aspinall was the captain. Yet again it was a low-scoring affair, and the game ended in a 2-2 draw. The only reward on the afternoon for Warrington, a drop goal from Aspinall. No winners then on the day, and the cup had to be put back into cold storage. 2 months later, on December the 2nd, Wyre lost the replay 13-10. They did have consolation, though, as they pipped Saints to win the Lancashire League with a 1-point advantage. The 1968-69 season was one to forget, really, in many ways. Warrington slumped to 17th position in the Championship, and it was typical of their form when they went down to one of their heaviest reverses by 33 points to 10 against Salford. And yet, cometh the true Warrington. Wyre reached the semi-finals, coming up yet again against the team from the Willows. They were a team of all-stars. David Watkins, the magical halfback from Wales, who'd caused a sensation by moving north and leaving the international rugby union scene for rugby league. That flying wingman, Keith Fielding, Chris Hesketh, Colin Dixon and Stevie Nash. Wyre had been bolstered by the likes of Jeff Bootle, Peter Harvey, Arthur Hughes and Ken Parr. But after a hard-fought encounter, it was the Red Devils who booked their tickets for Wembley by 15 points to 8. Hughes and Briggs were the Wyre try scorers. Bootle landed a goal. Sadly, those points were not to be enough. Groundsman Jackie Hamblett was another man who was a great servant to the Wyre. In an association that was to last 50 years, Jackie became close friends with all the Wyre players. His meticulous records of the Wyre have been found invaluable in tracing the hit club. He was so respected by the players that to celebrate his 50-year association, some of the great halfbacks during that period got together. Willie Aspinall, Parry Gordon, Bobby Fulton, Warren Ayres, Peter Harvey, Billy Kirk, Di Davies, Tommy Flynn, Jackie Goodall, Ron Ryder and Jackie Edwards. Hamblett became great friends with Warrington-born Aussie Bobby Fulton, who joined Wyre in 1969 and played 16 games for the club. Under coaches Jim Fleming, Joe Egan and Peter Harvey, the Wyre success was limited with poor results and low attendances. And this led to the formation of a new board, with Ozzie Davies at the helm. Brian Pitchford and Jim Worthington were in support, and this trio turned the fortunes of Wyre. The first masterstroke was the signing of the one and only Alex Murphy as player-coach. Under Murphy, Warrington topped the 1972-73 league table for the first time in 17 years and went on to win 4 major trophies the following season. The John Player Trophy, the ebullient Kevin Ashcroft was man of the match in that one, the Captain Morgan Trophy, and by now Welsh winger John Bevan had become part of Wilderspool folklore, and the Challenge Cup, which so many rugby league folks see as the game's major prize. This was the team that beat Featherstone Rovers. Kevin Ashcroft scored one of the tries and Derek Whitehead landed 9 goals to take the Landstod Trophy in a 26 points to 9 victory. A joyous moment in the phenomenal career of the maestro Murphy, who as player-coach had written another chapter in his own and Warrington's history. Murphy's influence had been crucial. Little wonder he was later to be honoured as one of Rugby League's first members of the Hall of Fame. It had been 20 years since Warrington's previous Wembley appearance against Halifax, so Wyre fans could be forgiven for savouring every second of this memorable day. What had made victory all the sweeter was that Featherstone had the league encounters against Warrington that season, but when it came to the big day, Warrington responded to Murphy's magic. The traditional homecoming for the Cup winners made it a weekend never to be forgotten for the Wyre. And 12 months later, Princess Alexandra was at Wembley, and so were Warrington again. The royal guest of honour was there to witness an all-Lancashire final. Widnes were Wyre's opponents on this day, and although the mercurial Bevan was again on the try sheet, the team missed Murphy's guidance on the pitch. He'd retired as a player by now, and the Chemics, with that man-mountain Jim Mills in irrepressible and unstoppable mood, were too good for them, going on to success by 14 points to 7. Murphy's contribution to rugby league was recognised when in May 1975 a benefit match was organised to celebrate his 25 years in the game. The venue, an England team managed by Mr Bill Oxley, played against a select 13 with some great players turning out in Murphy's honour. Vinty Corralius, John Bevan, Brian Bevan, Kevin Ashcroft, Doug Lawton, Colin Clark, to name just a few. And Brian Bevan crowned a great display with this well-taken try. The final score, England 30, Wire 10. Warrington were to come up against those old adversaries Widnes in the final of the John Player Trophy in 1978, and this time they won 9-4. This was a competition that obviously inspired Wire, and they again reached the final in 1979, only to lose to Widnes. In 1980, by which time Billy Benyon was in charge, Wigan were destroyed 26-10 in the Lancashire Cup final. Man of the match, the popular Tony Waller. What a good season this was for silverware. Steve Hesford and Ken Kelly, two of the team, triumph into the John Player Trophy final against Barrow. But on the black side, the club suffered a huge setback when the main stand at Wilderspool was burnt down in a spectacular but financially crippling blaze. Rick Thackeray and John Bevan were wingers by now, and although Benyon surprisingly resigned as coach, Kevin Ashcroft carried on the good work, and St Helens were roundly beaten 16-0 in the 1983 Lancashire Cup final, Hesford man of the match. And so to 1985 and another Lancashire Cup final against Wigan.
Brian Johnson's going down the field. Johnson's going to score for Warrington. Smith comes across.
Yes, the very same Brian Johnson who was later to take over the reins as Warrington coach. This Wire team, with youngsters like Ronnie Duane, Paul Cullen, Mike Kelly, Bob Eccles, John Fieldhouse and Mike Gregory, promised to enhance the traditions of this great club. Elland Road, Leeds was the scene of the next triumph in the 1986 Premiership final against Halifax.
For the gap, and it's a good pass there. Bishop goes for the play, the ball is over. Paul Bishop, that man is there again. So 6 tackle now for Warrington. Sanderson plays it to Gregory, little chip through. Play picked up by Paul Cullen. Cullen now beats one man through, away to Mark Foster. Mark Foster will go in for a great try, and Mark Foster is there.
In 1986-87, Wigan were the opponents in the John Player final at Burnden Park, normally the scene of soccer as Bolton Wanderers' home ground. But it wasn't a lucky venue for Wire. They went down 18-4, the only try for the Primrose and Blues registered by winger Mark Forster. The same season, another soccer ground, Old Trafford, Manchester, Wigan again in the Premiership final, and defeat again. Luck certainly wasn't on Wire's side on this day. Controversially, they were denied a try after a Wigan knock-on. Gary Sanderson highly to have been ruled accidentally offside. And Wigan were also fortunate to get away with another incident. Watch out for hooker Mark Roberts here. He's the number 9. And when he picks himself up, plays the ball to himself and was hauled back. Referee Allett not impressed, and Wigan won 8-0. No words of consolation from Tony Barrow were sufficiently comforting. At the start of the following season, Wire again came up against Wigan in the Lancashire Cup final at Knowsley Road, St Helens.
Twice the Wigan kicks have been charged down. John Woods, lovely dummy, gets it out to Gregory. Gregory still on his feet, gets his pass in. Shaking for the line, coming inside, and Warrington are over. Forster is over. Warrington take an early lead. Drummond coming over to the play, the ball. Inside onto Roberts. Roberts goes driving forward, and he nearly broken through the... Shove Wigan out of the way. Fifth tackle gone as it comes to Woods. Woods moving across. Coming inside, ball set to Woods. Woods gets it out to Holding. Holding turning it back inside. And Gregory's over. Good play by Warrington, brings another try.
In October, attractive opposition from Auckland.
Decides to put up the high kick. Krieger's underneath it, he can't hold it. It's picked up well by Roberts. And Roberts is in for the try. to be going back to the challenge, puts it out to Holden, sips the challenge, puts a good pass out onto Peters. He's driving to the far side, he's got Drummond in support now, Drummond gets the ball, the crowd comes to the feet. Freeman's chasing after him, but Drummond's going to go in. Well, one moment, Warrington were entrenched in their own half.
Despite that great try from Drummond, Auckland were the winners. Main Road Manchester was the venue in 1989 for the Challenge Cup semi-final between Warrington, now coached by John, and Wigan. Ex-Wire coach Tony Barrow was asked for a prediction.
I don't know, there's some pace in that Warrington team, you know. I mean, that the back row, I mean, McGinty and Gregory, Woods can still fly a little bit, you know, and then you've got on the wing you've got Desi Drummond there, you know. There's pace all round.
So you're not tipping anybody?
No, I'm not tipping anybody. It could go either way. My heart says Warrington, and then logic says Wigan.
The stage was set for a great game, and an injury-weakened Wire side missing Phil Blake and Les Davidson went into an early 4-point lead. But Wigan levelled, and then the turning point in Wigan's eventual 13-6 victory came in dramatic circumstances.
Biden tries a drop goal from 60 yards. Goodness me, what a massive kick! That is one of the most amazing drop goals you're ever likely to see.
Bob Jackson, a blonde blockbuster if ever there was one, was the epitome of the new Warrington side, a forward to fear anywhere near the opposition line. The opposition in the 1989 Lancashire Cup final at St Helens was Oldham, and with Jackson leading the way, a team which included David Lyon, Joe Rapati, Greg Mackey, and with Mike Gregory as skipper, was too good for the Roughheads. 24-16 the final score, Jackson a runaway winner of the Man of the Match award. Still the most coveted trophy is the Challenge Cup, and Wire had their chance to win it again in 1990. Pity they were up against Wigan in the final, just 2 moments for Wire fans to enjoy.
So a fine piece of set play from Warrington, and that's opened up Wigan a little bit. Bishop has seen the advantage. He's come back inside. Gregory's seen. Gregory's going. Oh, Gregory has scored. Mike Gregory has scored for Warrington. Their organisational power. But there's no effort from this man, Mike Gregory, linking with David Lyon. Lyon striding away. Dave Lyon got a score. Oh, that's a great try from David Lyon.
That was Warrington's last Challenge Cup final appearance, but not their last trophy. That came in the 1991 Regal Trophy final against Bradford Northern at Headingley, and gave Paul Cullen the chance to sum up just what it means to be a winner with Warrington Rugby League Club.
Well, that's what it's all about, winners. There's a thing on the back there and it says winners. And that's what the lads in this dressing room are, winners, and we've got to prove it to everyone. We've had a stinker this season, early doors, an absolute stinker. And it's a case of what's in there, what's in the ticker. It's all about bottle. And this squad is a team of art, a team of tickers, and we're running hard. We want to win for Warrington, we want to win for them who are doing the business for us.
There are, of course, many more people who were just as important in the history of the Wire. Di Davis, Jerry Helm, Seth Mountford, Jim Challoner, Brian Pitchford, and many, many more. Unfortunately, all couldn't be featured. But I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks once more for watching The Wire.